The peach cobbler box slipped from my hands when I saw her face in his passenger seat. Not a stranger. Vanessa Holbrook, the woman who stole my life. I had driven 4 hours from Detroit to Atlanta with that cobbler, made fresh from the bakery where Elijah used to get treats as a boy. 45 years old today, my successful accountant's son, and I wanted to surprise him at his office. Show up with his favorite dessert, and maybe take him to lunch at that place he loved downtown. The parking garage was dim, concrete pillars casting shadows everywhere. I spotted his silver Honda on the 3rd level and decided to wait inside the car to surprise him. That's when I saw movement in the front seat. 2 people, heads close together, laughing. I ducked behind a concrete pillar, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dashboard light illuminated their faces clearly. Elijah in the driver's seat, and beside him, Vanessa Holbrook. The same Vanessa who had sat in my living room 3 years ago, explaining why my husband Robert's will had to be restructured for tax purposes. The same Vanessa who had somehow made our family home, Robert's construction business, and nearly $200,000 vanish into legal paperwork I didn't need to understand. They weren't just talking. Elijah was handing her a thick manila envelope. She opened it, counted something inside, then signed documents against the dashboard. Her laugh was intimate, familiar, like they'd done this before, many times before. The cobbler box hit the concrete floor with a soft thud, peaches and crust scattering across the oil-stained surface. Neither of them looked up. They were too busy with their business transaction. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. Subscribe so you never miss the warning signs. My legs went weak. I pressed my back against the cold concrete pillar and watched my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had trusted, completely hand over documents that bore my late husband's business letterhead. Mitchell Construction. The company Robert had built from nothing, the company Vanessa claimed had been dissolved for tax purposes after his death. But here was proof it still existed, and Elijah was signing it away. Vanessa leaned over and kissed his cheek. Not a business kiss, not a casual kiss. The kind of kiss you give someone you're in partnership with, someone you trust, someone who's been helping you steal from his own mother for 3 years. The parking garage felt like it was closing in around me. Every sound echoed: car doors slamming somewhere below, engines starting, my own ragged breathing. The scent of peach cobbler mixed with gasoline and concrete dust, creating a smell I knew I'd never forget. Elijah started the engine. Vanessa tucked the envelope into her briefcase with practiced efficiency. As they prepared to leave, I caught fragments of their conversation through the slightly open passenger window. "The final transfer should clear by Friday," Vanessa said. "Good. She still doesn't suspect anything," Elijah replied. "Keep it that way." Confused and grateful, just like we planned. They drove past my hiding spot, Vanessa checking her makeup in the visor mirror, Elijah drumming his fingers on the steering wheel like he was pleased with himself. Neither of them saw me crouched behind that pillar, surrounded by the ruins of a birthday surprise that had become something else entirely. As Elijah handed over that manila envelope, I realized this wasn't their first meeting. Those documents they had my husband's letterhead. Count the red flags in this first meeting. You'll see how they connect. 3 months of silence feels like drowning in your own apartment. Every time the phone rang with his name, I let it go to voicemail. "Mama, it's Elijah, just checking on you. Call me back when you get this." Delete. "Hey, it's me again. Haven't heard from you in a few weeks. Everything okay?" Delete. "Mom, I'm getting worried. Mrs. Patterson next door said she hasn't seen you out much. Please call me." Delete. My cramped Detroit apartment had become a prison. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough for a table, and a living room that felt smaller every day. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was crushing. Like the walls were pressing closer each morning. I survived on Social Security checks and food from the corner store. Canned soup, crackers, instant coffee that tasted like cardboard. Nothing like the home-cooked meals I used to make in my real kitchen, in my real house, the one Vanessa somehow transferred out of my name while I was grieving. The television stayed on just for noise, volume low, showing game shows and soap operas I didn't watch. I'd sit in Robert's old chair, one of the few pieces of furniture Elijah let me keep, and replay that parking garage scene over and over. My son, my Elijah, The baby I'd nursed through pneumonia when he was 6, the teenager I'd driven to every basketball practice, the young man I'd helped through college, working double shifts at the school district to pay his tuition. He had looked so pleased with himself in that car. The phone rang again, his ringtone, "My Girl" by The Temptations. I'd programmed it years ago when he first moved to Atlanta, back when hearing from him made my day better. Now it made my stomach turn. The weight loss started in week 2, clothes hanging loose, appetite gone. Sleep came in patches between nightmares where I saw Vanessa's laugh, heard Elijah saying, "She still doesn't suspect anything." But I had suspected. Deep down, somewhere I didn't want to acknowledge, I had known something was wrong from the beginning. When Vanessa explained Robert's will changes, her words had been too smooth, too practiced. When Elijah supported every decision she made, his agreement came too quickly. I'd ignored those doubts because you're supposed to trust your child. You're supposed to trust the professionals they bring into your life. You're supposed to believe that people won't steal from a grieving widow. The voicemails kept coming. Elijah's tone shifted from concerned to frustrated to something that sounded almost angry. "Mom, this is ridiculous. I know you're screening my calls. Whatever's wrong, we can talk about it. I'm your son. My son." The words felt different now. Poisoned. Week 8. The voicemails stopped. Maybe he got tired of pretending to care. Maybe Vanessa told him it wasn't necessary anymore. Whatever they were stealing was already gone. But on a gray Tuesday morning in month 3, something shifted. I was sitting in Robert's chair, holding a cold cup of coffee, when I remembered something Elijah had said at the funeral. "Don't worry about Dad's business papers, Mama. I cleaned out his filing cabinet, took care of everything." Then I remembered Robert's filing cabinet, the one Elijah said he'd cleaned out after the funeral. Have you ever avoided someone because facing them meant accepting an unbearable truth? The lock was broken. Strange Robert always kept his business papers secure, and I never touched that cabinet. It sat in the corner of what used to be our bedroom, back when I lived in the house Robert built for us. Elijah had helped me move the cabinet to this apartment, along with a few other pieces he deemed sentimental but not valuable. Now I understood why he'd been so helpful. The metal drawers creaked when I pulled them open. Most were empty, just as Elijah had told me. But Robert was organized, obsessively organized. 37 years of marriage taught me his system. Important papers went in the back of the bottom drawer, behind the tax files that everyone would look through first. My fingers found the manila folder wedged behind old receipts. Inside, photocopies of documents I'd never seen before, Robert's handwriting on yellow sticky notes, and something that made my hands shake, a canceled check. The first document was a photocopy of a will, Robert's will, but not the version Vanessa had read to us in her office. This version left everything to me: the house, the business, the savings account, the life insurance, everything in simple, clear language that a grieving widow could understand. No complex trusts, no tax minimization strategies, no distributions to unnamed beneficiaries. Robert's handwritten note was stuck to the corner. Original copy locked in safe deposit box. Vanessa doesn't know about this backup. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Subscribe, you'll want to see what else she uncovers. My heart pounded as I read his other notes, all in his careful engineer's handwriting. Elijah asking lots of questions about business during hospital visits. Strange timing. Vanessa wants to meet privately, no Jada. Says it's too complicated for her to understand. Red flag? Elijah insists we need Vanessa. Says she's the best. How does he know her? The last note was dated 3 days before Robert died. Something's not right. Elijah and Vanessa keep pushing for signatures. Will changing things I never agreed to. Need to talk to Jada when I'm stronger. But Robert never got stronger. The canceled check was at the bottom of the folder, made out to Vanessa Holbrook, $15,000, dated 2 weeks before Robert's death. Signed by Elijah Mitchell. Not Robert. Elijah. I held that check under the lamp, studying every detail. The signature was definitely my son's. I'd seen it on birthday cards, Christmas thank you notes, graduation announcements. But the account was Robert's business account, the one only Robert was supposed to access. The account Vanessa claimed had been closed due to business dissolution. My phone buzzed. A text from Elijah. "Mama, I'm worried. Going to drive up this weekend to check on you. For the first time in 3 months, I smiled. Let him come. Let him see that I wasn't the confused, grateful widow they'd been counting on. I photographed every document with my phone, emailed copies to myself, made additional photocopies at the corner store. If Elijah had taught me anything during those hospital visits with Robert, it was that paper documents could disappear, but digital copies could be everywhere. The check was dated 2 weeks before Robert died, Elijah's signature, made out to Vanessa Holbrook for $15,000. Screenshot that date combination. It becomes crucial evidence. Dorothy Jenkins read the documents twice before she spoke. Honey, your boy planned this. Dorothy had been my closest friend during 30 years at the Detroit School District. We'd taught 4th grade in classrooms next to each other, shared lunch duty, covered for each other during family emergencies. After retirement, she'd gone back to school and become a paralegal. If anyone could make sense of what I'd found, it was Dorothy. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where we'd graded papers during countless evenings, planned lessons, and talked through problems with difficult parents. Now it was covered with evidence of my son's betrayal. Walk me through this timeline again, Dorothy said, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd laid the documents out in chronological order, the way she organized everything. Elijah signs a $15,000 check to Vanessa Holbrook 2 weeks before your husband dies. Then Vanessa shows up with a will that puts everything in a trust she controls. And Elijah supported every decision she made, I said. My voice sounded stronger than it had in months. Having someone else see what I was seeing, validate what I was thinking, it made the truth feel solid instead of crazy. Dorothy picked up Robert's handwritten notes. These concern me the most. Your husband was suspicious. He was asking the right questions, but he died before he could act on those suspicions. You think they rushed the process? I think they saw an opportunity and took it. Elderly man dying of cancer, devoted wife who trusts her son completely. Perfect setup for financial abuse. Financial abuse. The words sounded clinical, professional, like something that happened to other people, not to retired school administrators who'd been married for 37 years. What do I do with this information? Dorothy pulled out her phone. First, we document everything. I'm taking pictures of these documents from multiple angles. Different lighting, close-ups of signatures, dates, letterheads. Then we start making phone calls. She moved with the efficiency I remembered from our teaching days. Dorothy never panicked, never rushed, but she got things done. While I fell apart after Robert's death, Dorothy would have been building a case. I have a contact at the state bar, she said, scrolling through her phone. Vanessa Holbrook's behavior, if she's done this to you, she's done it to others. Professional misconduct leaves a trail. What if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation? Dorothy looked at me over her reading glasses. Jada, honey, what explanation could there be for your son writing a check to your husband's attorney without your knowledge? What explanation could there be for a will that contradicts your husband's clearly stated wishes? She was right. I'd been making excuses for Elijah because he was my son, the same way I used to make excuses for problem students because they were just children who needed understanding. But Elijah wasn't a confused child. He was a 45-year-old CPA who understood exactly what he was doing when he signed that check. Dorothy's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and smiled. Perfect timing. This is Janet Morrison. She handles attorney discipline cases at the state bar. Dorothy pulled out her phone. I know someone at the state bar. Vanessa Holbrook has complaints. Would you trust a friend's judgment over your own child's? What would it take? 3 other families. Same story. Same Vanessa Holbrook. Same missing assets. Janet Morrison's voice was careful, professional, but underneath I heard controlled anger. Dorothy had put the call on speaker so I could hear everything. I can't give you specifics about ongoing investigations, Janet said, but I can tell you that Vanessa Holbrook has been the subject of multiple complaints over the past 5 years. Estate planning that benefits the attorney more than the family. Complex trust arrangements that clients don't understand. Assets that disappear into administrative costs. How many complaints? Dorothy asked. Enough that we've been building a case, but these financial crimes are hard to prove. The victims are usually elderly, recently widowed, trusting. By the time they realize what happened, the paperwork is too complicated to untangle. I thought about Robert's hospital room. How Vanessa would arrive with stacks of documents that needed immediate signatures for tax purposes. How she'd explain everything in soothing tones while Robert was weak from chemotherapy. How she'd position herself as the expert who would take care of complicated things so the family could focus on healing. In every case, Janet continued, there's been a family member involved. Someone who validates the attorney's recommendations, someone who can provide inside information about assets and family dynamics. Dorothy looked at me across the kitchen table. Someone trusted. Someone who inherits more when the primary beneficiary gets less, Janet added. It's a pattern we see in financial elder abuse. The adult child partners with an unethical professional to redirect assets that should go to the surviving spouse. This pattern destroys families quietly. Subscribe to recognize predators before they strike. What can Jada do? Dorothy asked. Document everything. Get copies of all original documents. Bank records, especially any checks written to the attorney. Hospital visitor logs. If possible, we need to establish the timeline of when these documents were signed relative to the victim's capacity. Victim. Robert was a victim. I was a victim. But I was also a survivor with evidence. The good news, Janet said, is that estate fraud leaves a paper trail. Every forged signature, every redirected asset, every fake trust, it's all documented. The people who do this think they're being clever, but they're actually creating evidence of their own crimes. After the call ended, Dorothy made coffee, and we sat in her kitchen planning my next steps. She'd already called her nephew, who worked for a law firm that specialized in elder abuse cases. She'd scheduled an appointment with a handwriting expert who could analyze the signatures on Robert's will. One more thing, Dorothy said. Janet mentioned hospital visitor logs. Do you remember Elijah visiting Robert those final weeks? Every day, sometimes twice a day. I thought he was being a devoted son. What did they talk about? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. I'd been so focused on Robert's pain management, his medications, talking with doctors. When Elijah was there, I often stepped out to get coffee, make phone calls, handle the practical details of preparing for the end. Business details, I said slowly. Elijah said he was helping Robert get his affairs in order. I was grateful someone was handling the complicated stuff. In every case, there was a family member on the inside. Always someone trusted. How many red flags did you miss in your own family? Think about it. Attorney Xavier Crawford didn't smile when he saw the documents. This isn't sloppy fraud, it's calculated theft. Dorothy had recommended Crawford after researching elder law attorneys in Atlanta. His office was downtown, 3 blocks from Vanessa Holbrook's building. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were planning my counterattack practically next door to the woman who'd stolen my life. Crawford spread my evidence across his conference table like a detective working a crime scene. The canceled check, Robert's handwritten notes, the photocopied will, hospital visitor logs that Dorothy had helped me request. Each document told part of the story. Your son has access to your husband's business accounts, Crawford said, holding up the $15,000 check. That's not normal. Even adult children don't typically have signing authority on their parents' business accounts unless something's been planned in advance. Elijah said he was helping Robert with paperwork during his illness. Helping with paperwork doesn't include writing checks to attorneys. Crawford's voice was matter of fact, but his jaw was tight. This pattern, the timing, the amounts, the secrecy, I've seen it before. It's called financial elder abuse, and it's a felony. Financial elder abuse. The words sounded official now, not just Dorothy's opinion. Coming from an attorney who specialized in these cases, they carried weight. Crawford pulled up a legal database on his computer. Vanessa Holbrook has been practicing estate law for 12 years. She's had 3 state bar complaints in the past 5 years, all related to asset management irregularities, all dismissed due to insufficient evidence. What makes my case different? You have documentation. Most families in this situation don't realize they've been robbed until years later, when the evidence has been destroyed or hidden. Your husband was smart to keep backup copies. Robert. Even dying, he'd been trying to protect me. The thought made my chest tight. Crawford leaned back in his chair. I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared for this to destroy your relationship with your son permanently? I thought about Elijah's voice in that parking garage. She still doesn't suspect anything. I thought about 3 months of ignored phone calls, the weight loss, the sleepless nights in that cramped apartment. He already destroyed our relationship, I said. I'm just making it official. Good. Because once we file these motions, there's no going back. We'll be asking the court to freeze all assets, void the fraudulent will, and open a criminal investigation. Your son will be implicated. Vanessa Holbrook will fight back with everything she has. Crawford started typing on his computer. I'm drafting 3 motions. First, emergency relief to freeze all assets currently controlled by Vanessa's firm. Second, a petition to probate your husband's real will, the one that leaves everything to you. Third, a referral to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. How long does this take? The emergency motion? I can file it this afternoon. If the judge agrees there's evidence of fraud, we could have assets frozen by tomorrow morning. The rest will take months, maybe years. But the important thing is stopping them from moving any more money out of your reach. Crawford leaned forward. We need to move fast. They're probably liquidating assets as we speak. Guess how much time families have before assets disappear completely? The visitor log showed Elijah at the hospital every day during Robert's final week. What he was discussing wasn't comfort. Getting the hospital records took 2 weeks and a court order. Atlanta General wasn't eager to release information, even to a surviving spouse. But Crawford knew how to push the right legal buttons, and eventually the files arrived by courier to his office. I sat across from Crawford as he read through the medical records, his expression growing darker with each page. Your husband's capacity evaluation is interesting, he said. The attending physician notes that Robert was lucid during morning hours but experienced significant confusion and fatigue in the afternoons and evenings due to pain medication. That sounds right. The morphine made him groggy. Crawford flipped through more pages. According to these visitor logs, Elijah visited every day from December 10th through December 18th, the day your husband died. But look at the timing of his visits. He showed me the log sheet. Elijah's signature appeared consistently between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. every single day. That's when Robert was most medicated, I realized. Exactly. And look at this. Crawford pulled out another document. These are the timestamps on the estate planning documents Vanessa filed with the probate court. December 15th, 3:30 p.m. December 16th, 4:15 p.m. December 17th, 2:45 p.m. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. While I was meeting with hospice nurses, talking with the chaplain, handling Robert's comfort care, Elijah was in that room getting signatures on documents that would steal my inheritance. There's more, Crawford said. I had a handwriting expert analyze the signatures on these estate documents compared to other samples of your husband's signature from the same time period. He opened a folder containing blown-up copies of Robert's signature from various documents, hospital admission forms from early December, when he was still relatively alert, insurance forms from mid-December when his condition was declining, and the estate documents from his final week. The signatures on December 15th and 16th show clear deterioration, shaky handwriting, incomplete letter formation, normal for someone in his condition. Crawford pointed to the final document. But this signature from December 17th is different. The signature was strong, clear, perfectly formed. Robert Mitchell, written in confident script that looked nothing like the deteriorating handwriting from the days before. That signature was written by someone with full motor control and complete mental clarity, Crawford said. Your husband could barely hold a pen by December 17th, according to his medical chart. He certainly couldn't have produced this quality of penmanship. You're saying someone else signed his name. I'm saying this signature was created by someone who wasn't dying of pancreatic cancer and heavily medicated with morphine. My hands shook as I studied the evidence. Elijah had been there every day during Robert's worst hours, when my husband was too weak and confused to understand what he was signing. But on December 17th, when Robert could barely stay awake, someone had forged his signature with a steady hand. The signature analysis showed Robert's handwriting deteriorating except on one document. That signature was strong, clear, and dated after he couldn't hold a pen. Keep track of these signature dates. The timeline exposes everything. The court order was 1 page. Assets frozen pending investigation. I didn't celebrate. I prepared for war. Crawford called me at 8 a.m. with the news. Judge Christopher granted the emergency motion. All assets currently controlled by Vanessa Holbrook's firm are frozen as of this morning. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, real estate transfers, everything stops until we can sort out what belongs to who. I was drinking my morning coffee in that cramped Detroit apartment, but for the first time in months, it tasted like something other than defeat. What does this mean practically? It means Vanessa can't move another dollar out of your husband's estate. It means the house can't be sold. It means the business assets are locked down. Most importantly, it means we've bought time to build our case. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. Not Elijah this time, reporters. Somehow word had leaked about the court order, and financial elder abuse involving a prominent Atlanta attorney was newsworthy. I declined all interviews. This wasn't about public attention or revenge. It was about justice, and getting back what Robert had worked his whole life to build. Crawford's secretary called that afternoon. Vanessa Holbrook's office has been trying to reach Mr. Crawford all day. They're requesting an emergency hearing to dissolve the asset freeze. Let them request it, I told her. We have evidence, let's see what they have. But the most interesting call came at 4 p.m. My phone rang, and for the first time in 4 months, I answered when I saw Elijah's name. Mama? His voice was different, smaller, scared. Elijah, I heard about the court order. What are you doing? I'm taking back what your father left me. You don't understand the legal complications. Vanessa explained everything to us. The trust structure was designed to protect the assets from who, Elijah? From me? Silence on the other end of the line. I found the check, I said. $15,000, your signature. Made out to Vanessa Holbrook 2 weeks before your father died. What were you paying her for? More silence. Then, it's not what you think. What I think is that you conspired with Vanessa Holbrook to steal my inheritance while your father was dying in a hospital bed. What I think is that you forged his signature on estate documents when he was too weak to hold a pen. What I think is that you've been lying to me for 3 years. Mama, please. The assets are frozen, Elijah. Whatever you and Vanessa were planning to do with my money, it's over. You're making a mistake. This is going to hurt you more than it helps. Legal victories are temporary without evidence. Subscribe to see how she built her case. The threat in his voice was subtle but clear. My son, the baby I'd nursed through childhood illnesses, the boy I'd driven to basketball practice, the man I'd helped through college was threatening me. I've already been hurt, I said. Now it's your turn. Elijah called for the first time in 4 months. His voice was different, scared. Predict what Elijah says in that phone call. The answer might surprise you. Mama, you don't understand what you're doing. The entitlement in his voice made me stronger. Elijah showed up at my apartment 3 days after the court order was served. I watched him through the peephole, pacing in the hallway for 10 minutes before he finally knocked. When I opened the door, he looked older, tired, desperate. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the small living room. Yes, we do. He sat in Robert's old chair without being invited. The audacity of it, my son, who had helped steal my husband's legacy, sitting in the one piece of furniture I'd been allowed to keep from my real life. This court case is a mistake, he started. You're going to lose everything fighting it. I already lost everything, thanks to you. That's not true. The trust structure Vanessa set up protects your interests. You get monthly payments, healthcare coverage, housing assistance. Housing assistance? I laughed, a sound that surprised both of us. Elijah, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and survive on Social Security because your girlfriend stole my house. She's not my girlfriend. But his face flushed when he said it. Then what is she? Business partner? Co-conspirator? What do you call someone who helps you rob your own mother? Elijah stood up, started pacing the small room. You don't understand the tax implications, the estate planning strategies. If we hadn't restructured Dad's assets, the government would have taken most of it in taxes. Show me the tax calculations. What? You're a CPA, Elijah. Show me the math. Prove to me that stealing my inheritance saved money on taxes. He couldn't look at me. It's complicated. No, it's not. Your father left everything to me in a simple will. No trusts, no complications. Vanessa convinced him to change it while he was dying, and you helped her do it. That's not tax planning. That's theft. Elijah sat back down, put his head in his hands. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to come to me when he was in trouble. "I owe money," he said quietly. "What?" "I owe a lot of money. Bad investments, some gambling debts. I was going to lose everything: my house, my practice, my reputation." The truth was finally coming out. Not tax planning, not protecting family assets, gambling debts. "So you decided to steal from me instead?" "It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Vanessa said we could set up monthly payments that would actually give you more security than managing the assets yourself. You'd never have to worry about money again." "Monthly payments from my own money?" "Yes, but controlled by Vanessa. She has experience with asset management." "Elijah." My voice was calm now, steady. "Listen to what you're saying. You stole my house to pay your gambling debts, and you're trying to convince me it was for my own good." He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry." When he said, "You'll lose everything fighting this," I smiled for the first time in months. I already lost everything. Now I'm taking it back. What would you say to a child who stole your life? Share your response. The paralegal who called wouldn't give her name. "Vanessa Holbrook destroyed my family too. I have copies." She asked me to meet her at a coffee shop near the Detroit-Windsor border. Neutral territory, she called it, somewhere Vanessa's Atlanta connections couldn't reach. I arrived early, ordered black coffee, and waited. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman in her 30s approached my table. Short brown hair, nervous eyes, carrying a messenger bag that she clutched like a life preserver. "Mrs. Mitchell?" I nodded. "I'm Lisa. I worked for Vanessa's firm. I quit last week after I saw what they were doing to you." She sat down across from me, glancing around the coffee shop like she expected Vanessa to walk through the door any moment. "I've been Vanessa's paralegal for 3 years. I've seen her do this before, but your case was different, more personal. She talked about you constantly, about how your son was managing the situation." "What situation?" Lisa opened her messenger bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Your situation. The Jada Mitchell problem," she called it. Inside the folder were printouts of emails, copies of internal memos, and what looked like a detailed timeline with my name at the top. "Vanessa keeps meticulous records of everything," Lisa explained. "She has to, for legal protection. But what she doesn't realize is that those same records prove what she's been doing." I read the first email, dated 6 months before Robert's death. It was from Elijah to Vanessa. "Mom is asking questions about Dad's business accounts. How do we handle this?" Vanessa's response: "Keep her focused on his medical care. I'll handle the legal details. The less she understands, the smoother the transition will be." My hands shook as I read through more emails. Elijah providing detailed information about Robert's assets. Vanessa coaching him on what to say and when to say it. A step-by-step plan to isolate me from my husband's estate planning. "This email chain is from December," Lisa said, pointing to a series of messages. "Right before your husband died." Elijah: "Dad's getting suspicious. He's asking to see the original documents." Vanessa: "Don't let him see anything without me present. We're too close to completion to have problems now." Elijah: "What if he changes his mind?" Vanessa: "He won't have time to change his mind. I'll make sure of that." "Make sure of what?" I asked. "Keep reading." The next email was from Vanessa to Elijah. "Your mother must never see the original will. Keep her confused and grateful. Emotional manipulation works better than legal threats." I felt sick reading it. Every conversation I'd had with Vanessa, every comforting explanation about complex legal procedures, every time she'd told me not to worry about details I wouldn't understand, it had all been calculated manipulation. "There are 47 emails in this chain," Lisa said, "all documenting the plan to defraud you, all admissible in court." "Why are you helping me?" "Because Vanessa destroyed my grandmother's estate 5 years ago. Same pattern, same methods. I didn't know enough then to stop it. Now I do." The email chain showed Vanessa coaching Elijah. "Your mother must never see the original will. Keep her confused and grateful." "How many families do you think Vanessa destroyed? The number will shock you." Vanessa's cease and desist letter was 8 pages of legal threats. My response was 2 sentences. "See you in court. Bring handcuffs." Crawford read Vanessa's letter out loud in his office. his voice getting more amused with each paragraph. She was demanding that I stop spreading false accusations, cease all frivolous litigation, and withdraw my baseless claims against her professional reputation. "She's scared," Crawford said, folding the letter. "This reads like panic. What do we do?" "We give her exactly what she's asking for, a court appearance." Crawford had been busy since Lisa handed over the email evidence. He'd filed a formal complaint with the state bar, submitted a criminal referral to the district attorney's office, and contacted 3 other families that Vanessa had defrauded using similar methods. "The media is interested too," he said. "Atlanta Journal-Constitution wants to do a story about estate fraud targeting elderly clients. Your case would be the lead example." "I don't want publicity." "You might not have a choice. Vanessa's been operating in the shadows for years. The only way to stop her is to drag everything into the light." 2 days later, the story ran on the front page of the Atlanta newspaper's business section. "A state attorney accused of systematic fraud against elderly clients." My name was mentioned, but the focus was on Vanessa's pattern of behavior across multiple families. By noon, my phone was ringing with calls from other victims: an elderly man whose daughter had helped Vanessa steal his restaurant, a widow whose son had given Vanessa access to her late husband's pension, a retired teacher whose nephew had convinced her to sign over her house for tax purposes. Same story, different families, same methods, different victims. Public exposure changes everything. Subscribe to see justice served properly. Crawford's office became a makeshift support group for Vanessa's victims. We compared documents, shared timelines, connected the dots between our individual cases. What had felt like personal betrayal revealed itself as professional fraud on a massive scale. "She's been doing this for at least 6 years, Crawford told us during one of our meetings. Targeting recently widowed clients, finding family members with financial problems, setting up complicated trust arrangements that benefit her firm." "How much money?" asked Michael Chen, the man who'd lost his restaurant. "From what we can document, over $2 million in fraudulent asset transfers." The number was staggering, but it made sense. Vanessa lived well: expensive office, luxury car, high-end clothes. I thought she was successful because she was good at her job. Turns out she was successful because she was good at stealing. The detective who handled white-collar crimes in Atlanta called Crawford's office that Thursday afternoon. Detective Maria Santos had been building a case against Vanessa for 18 months, but she needed victims willing to testify. "We've been watching Vanessa Holbrook," Detective Santos told me during our phone interview. "Your complaint gave us the final pieces we needed. We're moving forward with criminal charges." "What kind of charges?" "Elder abuse, financial fraud, conspiracy, forgery. If convicted, she's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." The detective who took my case said 5 words that changed everything. "We've been watching Vanessa Holbrook." "How long do you think police were investigating?" "Your guess reveals how justice really works." I wasn't there when they arrested Vanessa, but I felt it like a weight lifting from my chest. Detective Santos called me at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. "Vanessa Holbrook was arrested at her office 20 minutes ago. Thought you'd want to know." I was making coffee in my cramped Detroit apartment, but for the first time in 4 years, I felt like I could breathe deeply. "What happens now?" "Arraignment this afternoon. Media will probably cover it. Are you prepared for that?" I'd already decided. After months of hiding, months of shame about my son's betrayal, I was done being quiet. The local Atlanta news covered the story that evening. I watched from my apartment as Vanessa walked out of the courthouse in handcuffs, her expensive suit wrinkled, her perfect hair disheveled. The reporter mentioned that she was being held without bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges. Elijah wasn't mentioned in the news coverage, but Crawford had warned me that would change. The district attorney was building a conspiracy case, and Elijah's emails with Vanessa proved he was more than just a victim of her manipulation. "They'll probably offer him a deal," Crawford explained during our phone call. "Testify against Vanessa in exchange for reduced charges." "What kind of charges is he facing?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, possibly forgery if they can prove he helped fake your husband's signature." My son, the boy I'd raised to know right from wrong, the man I'd trusted completely, facing federal prison because he'd chosen gambling debts over his mother's welfare. The phone calls started that afternoon, reporters wanting my reaction to Vanessa's arrest, other victims wanting to thank me for coming forward, and one call I hadn't expected. Elijah. Mama, I need to see you. Now you want to see me? After Vanessa's been arrested? Please, I'm in trouble. I need your help. You needed my help 4 years ago when you were stealing from me. Where was I when you needed help? I know I messed up. I know you hate me. But you're still my mother. Still his mother. The words hurt because they were true. Despite everything he'd done, despite the betrayal and the lies and the months of isolation, some part of me still loved the little boy he used to be. What do you want from me, Elijah? The prosecutor wants me to testify against Vanessa. If I do it, they'll reduce my charges. If I don't, I could go to prison for 10 years. So testify. It's not that simple. Vanessa has information about my gambling debts, people I owe money to. If I testify against her, she'll make sure they know where to find me. You should have thought about that before you conspired to rob your mother. Mama. No, Elijah. You made your choices. You chose Vanessa over me. You chose gambling over family. You chose theft over honesty. Now you get to live with those choices. The prosecutor called with an offer. Vanessa wants to plea bargain. She's offering full restitution plus damages. Take the deal or demand trial. What's your justice strategy? Elijah stood outside my apartment for an hour before knocking. When I opened the door, he was crying. I hadn't seen him cry since his father's funeral. Real tears, not the fake remorse he'd shown during our previous conversations. He looked older, thinner, defeated. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let him into the small living room. He sat in Robert's chair again, but this time he seemed to shrink into it instead of claiming it. I testified against Vanessa yesterday, he said. I know, Crawford told me. Did he tell you what I said? Some of it. Elijah wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I told them everything. The gambling debts, the loan sharks, how Vanessa approached me after Dad's diagnosis, how she knew I was desperate and offered me a way out. She approached you? At a casino in Biloxi. I was there trying to win back money I'd lost the week before. She was there with clients, but she recognized me from Dad's business. Started talking about estate planning, about how much money Dad had tied up in assets. This was news to me. I'd assumed Elijah had found Vanessa, not the other way around. She made it sound like a business opportunity, Elijah continued. Help her restructure Dad's assets, and she'd make sure I got enough to cover my debts plus interest. She said you'd be taken care of too, that you'd never know the difference. But I did know the difference. I lost everything. I know. I told myself you'd be fine with the monthly payments from the trust. I told myself you didn't need all that money anyway. I told myself a lot of lies. Elijah looked around the cramped apartment. This is where you've been living for 3 years? This is where you put me. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, does it? No, it doesn't. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear traffic, sirens, the normal sounds of a city going about its business, while my family fell apart. What did you tell the prosecutor about me? Elijah asked. What do you mean? Did you ask them to go easy on me? Did you put in a good word? The question made me angry all over again. Even now, after everything, he expected me to protect him. Elijah, you stole my house. You helped forge your father's signature. You conspired with a criminal to defraud me while I was grieving. What kind of good word did you think I would put in for you? You're my mother. You're my son. That didn't stop you from destroying my life. So you want me to go to prison? I want you to face the consequences of your actions. I want you to understand that choices have results. I want you to learn something your father and I apparently failed to teach you. Elijah stood up, headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back. There's only one way back into your life, isn't there? I told him there was only one way back into my life. Testify against Vanessa. Tell the whole truth. Help the other families she destroyed. Could you forgive a child who stole your life? Where do you draw the line? The key to my old house felt foreign in my hand. 3 years of theft, but the azaleas Robert planted still bloomed. Crawford had called that morning with the news. Vanessa accepted the plea agreement, full restitution, 3 years in federal prison, permanent disbarment. The house is yours again. I drove from Detroit to Atlanta on a gray March afternoon, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as I turned into the driveway of the house Robert built for us. The yard was overgrown, paint was peeling on the shutters, but it was still standing, still mine. The key stuck in the lock at first, like the house was reluctant to let me back in. When the door finally opened, the smell hit me first. Dust and emptiness, and the faint scent of Robert's aftershave that somehow still lingered in the hallway. Vanessa had rented the house to strangers for 3 years, pocketing the rental income. They'd been neat tenants, but they hadn't loved this place the way Robert and I had. The walls needed painting, the hardwood floors needed refinishing, but the bones of our life together were still here. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen where we'd shared morning coffee for 37 years. The living room where we'd watched Elijah take his first steps. The bedroom where Robert had died, where I'd held his hand and promised to take care of everything he'd worked for. I'd kept that promise, just not the way I'd expected. In Robert's workshop behind the house, I found something that made me sit down hard on his old stool. A metal box hidden behind paint cans, secured with a combination lock. The combination was our anniversary date, something only I would know. Inside the box, another copy of his real will, this one witnessed and notarized by his business partner from the construction company, a letter addressed to me in Robert's handwriting, and a set of keys to a safe deposit box I'd never known existed. The letter was dated a week before his death. "My dear Jada, if you're reading this, something has happened to the will I gave Vanessa Holbrook. I've been having second thoughts about the complicated trust arrangements she keeps pushing. This feels wrong, and I trust my feelings more than I trust her explanations. Everything should go to you, simply and clearly, the way we've always planned. Elijah means well, but he's been asking too many questions about money, and Vanessa seems to know more about our finances than she should. I love you. Take care of yourself. Don't let anyone convince you that complicated is better than clear, Robert." I held that letter and cried for the first time since his funeral. Not tears of grief or anger or frustration, but tears of relief. Even dying, even confused by medications and manipulated by people he trusted, Robert had been thinking of me, protecting me the only way he could. The safe deposit box contained bonds and investment certificates worth nearly $100,000. Money Vanessa had never known about, money Elijah had never counted on, money Robert had set aside for my security. In Robert's workshop, I found something Vanessa never knew existed. His real will, witnessed and notarized, hidden where only I would look. Where do you hide your most important documents? Think about who you really trust. They didn't applaud when I walked into the community center. They nodded like people who finally understood what strength looks like. The Robert Mitchell Memorial Fund was my idea. Crawford had suggested using part of the settlement money to help other families fighting estate fraud, but I wanted something that honored Robert's memory while serving people he would have cared about. "We'll provide legal assistance to elderly victims of financial abuse," I explained to the small group gathered that evening. "Free consultations, document review, court support. Everything I wish I'd had access to when this started." Dorothy Jenkins sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Detective Santos had driven up from Atlanta to attend the launch event. Even Lisa, the paralegal who'd risked her job to expose Vanessa's crimes, was there with her own grandmother. Jada Mitchell turned her personal tragedy into public service. The local newspaper wrote about the fund launch. Her quiet determination to seek justice has created resources that will help protect other families from similar crimes. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Elijah had written me a letter from the minimum security federal prison where he was serving his 18-month sentence. "Mama, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm proud of what you've accomplished. The other inmates think I'm crazy for saying my mother is a hero, but that's what you are. You took the worst thing that could happen to a family and turned it into something that helps other families. Dad would be proud too." I kept that letter in Robert's workshop, next to the metal box where he'd hidden his real will. Real strength doesn't need applause. Subscribe to see more stories of quiet triumph. Every morning now, I make Robert's coffee for two, 1 cup for memory, 1 for the woman who learned to fight back. I sit in our kitchen, in our house, surrounded by the life we built together, and I plan my day around helping other people reclaim their own stolen lives. The fund has helped 17 families in its first year. We've recovered over $400,000 in stolen assets. We've seen 3 other financial predators arrested and prosecuted. We've prevented dozens of fraudulent estate transfers through early intervention and education. But the victory I'm most proud of is simpler than all of that. I'm living in my own house again, sleeping in my own bed, making decisions about my own money. The woman who was supposed to be confused and grateful turned out to be sharp and dangerous. Vanessa Holbrook learned that the hard way. Last week, I received a call from a woman in Birmingham whose son had convinced her to sign over her house to his financial advisor. The story was familiar: the isolation, the manipulation, the complicated explanations that didn't quite make sense. "What should I do?" she asked. "First," I told her, "trust your instincts. Second, call a lawyer. Third, don't let anyone convince you that you're too old or too confused to understand your own financial affairs." Every morning I make Robert's coffee for 2, 1 cup for memory, 1 for the woman who learned to fight back. The taste of victory is surprisingly gentle. What would you do with a second chance at justice? Share the one thing you'd change.